Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. I'm sorry we are a minute late because General Prabdeep Singh just gave me a shock. Honestly, I thought I was up to date with regards to Ukraine war. Sir, you proved me wrong. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Ari. Good to be on the show once again. As usual, I look forward to Thursdays in talking about Ukraine. As you just said, you're shocked, but that's a fact. And lots of news coming around. Well, for the viewers, the shocking part of it is that is, there is some rumor and some talk of Poland, and uh, suggesting that President Zelensky, should resign, and that is so that the Ukraine war is brought to some sort of a conclusion. So this is actually great news, and of course we've all heard, we've seen, and we've read about what is happening. The missile barrages which are being let loose on Ukraine by Russia. Uh, this is being done very systematically, and this is all with a view to suppress the air defense, get destroy all the logistic bases in the rear, get the ammunition. As it is, they're very short of ammunition, so targeting of the ammunition depots, fuel, fuel dumps, etc. So this is part of a regular campaign. Now, when you talk of a campaign, this is what a campaign is all about. You want to degrade the enemy's war fighting potential to such a degree that actually walk in, uh, when you walk inside, it is the going is pretty smooth. So that's
Hmm.
precisely what is happening, and I wish we had more intelligence to suggest as to what is happening behind the Russian borders and where the Russian troops are getting massed, and where exactly, if an offensive from the Russian side has to come, where will it come? The quantum of missiles being fired is not funny.
Hmm.
Uh, Kinzhal's, the suggestions to say that Kinzhals have been destroyed, and the Russians laughing it out to say that we didn't even fire so many as you have destroyed. So there's kind of information warfare which continues. But the fact of the matter is the Patriot air defense systems, missile air defense systems, which were there in and around Kiev to provide that AD umbrella, air defense umbrella around Kiev, that has been destroyed, stroke damaged. Some reports suggest that the Americans are ready to repair it, but outside Ukraine. There's certain reports to suggest that United States has said that this system is not to be used till we understand as to how come it got damaged. So all these reports are coming in, but it's huge. Now, as I was jokingly suggesting that, you know, this missile air defense system is being confused by firing far too many missiles onto Kiev. And that's a good tactics if I have to follow, and if I had that kind of, uh, ammunition or missiles in the inventory. So this is precisely what has happened. They fired so many, and obviously one or two are bound to go through and damage such kind of a system. We've also seen attacks coming on to Odessa. Now Odessa, again, I've always said, without the capture of Odessa, nothing is this war doesn't get complete. Without
Hmm.
getting control over the Black Sea, this war doesn't get complete. uh, you may get more of less on the east and to the north, but south is extremely critical. So where the main thrust of the Russians, or the main uh, war effort is applied, is yet to be seen, and we will see it as the days go by, because every day it's becoming more and more interesting. Yeah.
So the interesting, I mean, see, the deal is Let's talk about the fatigue which is setting in within Europe. So this is something which is very interesting to me because we have a situation where the Europeans. Okay, let me just say this: Macron has broken ranks. There's no question about it, right? So that has happened already, and you find that today the European leaders, they're not. Okay, let me just say this: it's not the globalists which are probably realizing it. It's the regular guys that are realizing it. So when you say that Zelensky should resign, when somebody tells Zelensky bhai to ab jayer, what does that really mean? What is it in for Europe? What are they looking for right now? They're sick of the war. You said that. What is it
No,
that they can do?
yeah.
And you mentioned a certain word which would happen to the conflict when we are talking offline. Just, I mean, that's very curious to me, sir.
You see, what happened? What has happened right now? And if you study Europe, the entire of Europe is pretty fed up. If I may just put it plainly, the common man is fed up. The taxpayers' money has been, utilized to get the last Ukrainian killed. Uh, there is a huge energy crisis. There is a lot of there is a food crisis. There is an economic crisis, whatever crisis. There is ammunition, arms and ammunition, which were there in their inventory that has been supplied to the Ukrainians. Now, the amount of money that has been pumped into Ukraine is not funny. Everybody realizes that. There are reports to suggest that Zelensky's made at least $400 million worth of money for himself, kept it aside. So corruption is a part of Ukrainian culture uh, under the present government. So when such kind of a thing has been existing, and many officials have been, arrested, stroke, asked to leave, or disappeared because of corruption, well, the future is not very bright for Ukraine. Now, as far as the fatigue is concerned, if you look around, this war has to end on a positive note before the US elections. Period. Now, what is that positive note? That is what is important to note. Is it an all out victory? I have a doubt that the NATO forces, West combined, can push Ukraine to such an extent that there will be an outright, uh, rout of the Russians, and that the Russians will fall back and Crimea will come back into the Ukrainian fold. Well, we all understand it's not going to happen. So what is going to happen? What's going to happen is everybody is today fed up and they are looking at a solution. The solution is end the war. Now everybody started talking about end the war. As you are, have the have the front lines, the current front lines as a de facto border for the time being. In an Indian parlance, not Indian parlance, in an international parlance, this would be called a working boundary, right?
Line of
So,
control types.
yeah, why I use this terminology is in context in Pakistan trying to, use this term in India. But this is kind of a working boundary arrangement till a solution is reached. Now, if this does not happen, if war doesn't end today, Russia is going to take in much more territory. So, what is in the interest of everybody? Stop the war, and current lines remain as the front lines, as the borders, and Russia stays where it is. If the war is pushed beyond this, if Zelensky continues with the war, and it is pushed, Russia is going to gain much more territory. So that is, and an overall analysis I would say is it's better to stop the war now. Otherwise, you'll have to give away more territory, and that is what is being told to the Ukrainians. and you know that the African nations, 6 African nations are now also jumped into the peace-making wagon, and they are also suggesting some, which Zelensky and Putin both have agreed to listen to. That's again
Even with the
interesting,
Pope. Even with the Pope, sir.
even with the Pope. So, so the overtures, the efforts are to arrive at a peaceful solution. Nobody is now talking about sticking to that, point where the Russians have to leave Ukraine, and that's the only time I will concede. That's the only kind of a negotiation I will look into.
वो ठीक
And
है, that's like you open the negotiation on hard stance. आपने ये समझाया था पिछली बारी.
yeah, so this kind of a thing is happening. Uh, Europe today is saying thank you. A lot of nations are revolting internally, and the governments are also wary of the fact. After all, they have to survive in their own countries. So their survival is at stake at the moment. Yeah.
What's with this F-16 thing, sir, that Rishi Sunak was talking about? That we will find an international combination of nations who will support
Yeah.
Ukraine with F-16, and the US is inconspicuously quiet. Who's supposed to give the F-16? He's
You
quiet.
see, that is the interesting part of it. Now the F-16 coalition is a UK and a Netherlands kind of a coalition, but the
Yeah.
UK said, "I'm not going to give you aircraft." Very simple. The United Kingdom, while Rishi Sunak may have given him a beer hug, but the fact of the matter is only agreed upon training. Now let me just tell you, the only good thing that the Britishers do, British Army does and wants to do is training. Whether it was in Sierra Leone or whether it was in Afghanistan or whether it is Iraq, wherever they go, the only thing that they really want to do is training. They love their instructors, they love doing what they do because that is all that they're good at. And as far as committing aircraft is concerned, they said, sorry, we are not going to commit because we don't fly F-16s. They do not have F-16s. And the Americans who are supposed to, own them and supply them and commit are non-committal absolutely about committing F-16. So this international coalition of forces. Well, what is NATO? Yeah, I thought it was already an international coalition. So where is the need of a separate international coalition of forces? So this kind of a thing is amusing to me.
It's the same thing as the coalition of the willing.
Coalition of the willing or unwilling at the moment, I think it's more of unwilling right now, and it's trending towards the unwilling. So if NATO is not a coalition of forces, then why do you need a separate international coalition of forces where aircraft will be, pulled in? There is something amiss. There is something amiss. And NATO may not be playing ball, or NATO countries are not playing ball, or there is a divide between the NATO. We already know Hungary is absolutely up and against arms. Germany is against supplying aircraft. It has said that we will not supply any aircraft. So, without aircraft, without air defense, without an air force, worthwhile air force. And again, another amusing thing that I find is everybody is ready to train the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are ready to go elsewhere and train. After all, they're away from the battle lines. So many thousands being trained in UK, so many thousands being trained in Poland, so many thousands. Oh, I love it. Nobody is wanting to fight, but they're all busy training, as if army has just been raised and the war is going to take place maybe after 4 or 5 years. So this kind of a thing is, and you're fighting against a well-organized, well-equipped army, which was always preparing all these years to counter this kind of action which the NATO would take. An army which is all its life has been working towards this, and today they are facing the same challenge, and they are better prepared.
Removing existential threats to Russia. Yeah, that's the main.
Yeah. So they were always preparing for this. They were always organized. It's an organized army. It's not ragtag. It's not a coalition. It's not a mashup of different armed forces, different training
True.
doctrines.
Mm.
Whatever you may say, NATO itself, uh, the NATO doctrine is just limited to the NATO handbook, and that's all, and a couple of trainings that they carried out battalion level. Uh, that is not going to get them anywhere.
So let's talk about this. I mean, you did speak about the hypersonic and stuff like that. That's a little intriguing to me, and I want to dig a little more, if you permit me. Now, the standoff attacks that the Russians are doing. This is very interesting to me because the news that the Russian Ministry of Defense puts out is the Russian aircraft took off, they went to the attack zone, launched their missiles, and came back. And they are nowhere close to Ukraine.
So that's what happens. No, this
So they're
all.
going to the Arctic somewhere and firing these missiles.
No, no, no. It's not
Normally,
a. Yeah.
where are they going? North Sea? Where? What's
No,
happening
no.
there?
You see, I'm not trying to understand the ranges of these missiles. 2,500 kilometers
They have to.
is the
Okay.
range. Is the range of a missile. So where is the requirement of getting into enemy territory and letting it go? These are all they, that BVR part of it, beyond visual range aspects. Then these are all geosynchronized. So they know where the target is. They just have to be let off. Glide bombs and all that. So these missiles, these glide bombs, these are precision guided munitions which are just fed the coordinates, right? And they are intelligent enough to be able to you know find out as to where they have to go, and they fly at such high speeds that they cannot be detected, or they fly at such an altitude that they cannot be detected. So the aircraft which are carrying them need not enter enemy space. So they'll take off. Now, supposing they'll take off from uh, the east coast of Russia or the eastern part of Russia. They'll be taking off from somewhere there, coming in between, and when they're at about 2,000 kilometers away from the target, they let loose the missile, and there goes the missile on its own at such a speed. So the aircraft itself is not getting interdicted. So that is what it is.
Fair enough. And that strike that took place in Western Ukraine, so that was very interesting to me. In one day, the Russians claimed hitting ammunition dumps all over Ukraine. And the
That's what.
sizes of these explosions were not normal, sir. I mean, they were nowhere normal with regards to what they were.
Again, that ISR. You see, now uh, ISR capability, the Russians, Chinese, Americans, ours, whatever, is pretty good.
Hmm.
All right. Each and every target, I've explained earlier as well, each and every target is studied. Each and every target, now supposing there is a headquarter. I told you about how we detect headquarters. I told
Correct, sir.
now if there is a particular formation, now supposing there was a brigade located at place X, right? You photograph it today, you find it at place X. Tomorrow, the same signatures are available at a different location, and that previous location is khali, it's empty. So that formation is moved to that location. So these satellites are going, over and over and over again, and satellite pictures and satellite imageries are coming down, are being passed down on the ground. So people are there studying all that locations. So you have experts who interpret all these satellite imageries. You have signal intelligence tech and guys who are studying all that. Now, as a part of a campaign, one day you decide, okay, I'm going to take on all ammunition dumps. Next day I decided to go on all air defense, right? In fact, the air defense would be the first one to be taken off because air defense would be provided at these vulnerable areas or vulnerable points or these strategic locations. They would be guarded, right? So those need to be taken first. Like today, today's strikes which they have launched in the morning, they're all aimed at energy resources, all power
Yeah.
stations. So it's a very systematic kind of a campaign which is getting executed, is getting unfolded. Now, if I had all the, supposing I were to study this, and if I was sitting in an ops room and I had the maps and I had the wherewithal, I would plot all this, targeted this. So he's starting from rear and coming down to this, coming down to this. Now my main worry is, will he attack? What? Why is he not attacking? Where will he attack? So those are the kind of studies the Ukrainians and the NATO forces ought to be doing, and I'm sure that they're doing it. The only problem on that side is, I think the information that is coming to the Ukrainians, or the intelligence which is being provided to the Ukrainians, is not first hand; it's second hand. Why I'm saying second hand? Because it's an external agency giving that information, and a different country, the Americans giving, or the NATO forces giving, or whatever, they are giving intelligence to the Ukrainians. So until unless there are proper American soldiers or NATO, guys sitting inside Ukraine and advising the Ukrainians, nothing worthwhile can come. And of course, the Ukrainians listening to them. That's another factor.
Another thing.
You
And
know,
not firing 30 rockets in 2 minutes.
trust me, when you are in a, when you have a conglomeration of such forces, and if you are the affected party, you'll say, yeah, you lay off, I know what I'm doing. This guy will say, no, I'll tell you what to do. He says, no, this is my country, I know what to do. So these kind of tasks will always take place even at the grassroots level. So I am sure if this kind of intelligence sharing is taking place, there are people there on ground who are either Americans, whether they could be veterans, and they could be mercenaries. Uh, I mean,
Blackwater.
yeah, you can always say that they are mercenaries. What stops you from saying that these are, we've had an instance where a CIA, where an American soldier was killed, mercenary was
Day for
killed.
yesterday.
Yeah. So these kind of things will happen. So what I'm saying is that this is second-hand information, second-hand intelligence. Whereas it's not the case with the Russians. There
So, but this
is,
strike, what's the significance of that? I mean, see, the I keep it's a name with K. I keep forgetting the name. It's quite a Kalimoisky or something like that. It's a
yeah.
complicated name. But the size, and that damn thing exploded not once, it exploded 8 times in an hour and a half.
Oh, that I'll tell you what happens. Now, when you hit an ammunition depot, now let me just tell you, out of experience also, I'm just trying to tell you, when an ammunition depot is hit, ammunition is kept not stacked up together. The ammunition is kept separated as per classification in different areas, right? Normally, it is in covered areas, and it could be lying in the open, but it has to be covered because of the weather and things like that. So the ammunition is stacked. Now, if you hit one stack, or one, uh, what do you call,
Pile or something, yeah.
one building, right? One bay or one building. Now, one building, that ammunition takes off from that building. It gets on and it hits the next one. The explosion, these rockets and all just take off in all directions. The bombs take off in all different directions. They may land within the ammunition dump, or they may land outside. So they start flying on their own because of the explosions that are taking. So one triggering off the other and the other and the other. So that is what you're talking about is 8 explosions. So it is natural when you hit an ammunition dump. It's going to happen. So one rocket takes off from there and it gets onto the next barrack, and then the next barrack takes off, or it goes outside and hits something, and blasts off. So this kind of a thing happens. So
They hit, I mean, the claim is that they hit $500 million worth of equipment in that one shed.
Yeah, so not in this would be one ammunition dump
Yeah,
depot.
one dump, one in that one strike, sir.
Yeah, so 500 million worth has gone. There's all that depleted uranium, and we've seen the radiation which has emanated from there. Now, uh, these are the kind of strategic targets, man. These are the kind of strategic targets. I mean, you hit an ammunition dump which is so critical, and you know the effect on the war. The war waging capability has to be diminished at every level. So that's what the Russians are doing. And which counteroffensive are we talking about? I don't see no counteroffensive coming. Uh, President Zelensky keeps, he said that there's a surprise in waiting for the Russians
Mhm.
when the counteroffensive comes, and we've delayed the offensive because we want to be better prepared. I don't know when are they going to launch. The local counterattacks which have been launched and which have been successful, they've been, I think, blown out of proportion in Bakhmut, leading to that controversy, between the Wagner and the Russian forces.
That's the last question that I'll ask you. That's the fun part of it. So we'll kind of have a little fun before we close. But uh, interestingly, sir, the strikes are all over the place. They're not in the front line. They're not in the eastern side of the Dnieper. This is 150 kilometers from the Polish border, so right to the, you know.
Yeah, so that's what, because this, after all, what are they doing? If I have to just study as to how the movement of all these tanks, ammunition, weaponry, whatever has to come, somewhere it has to get collected. And if I just see it, it is Poland, which is the main, contributor of arms and equipment to Ukraine, the
Correct.
biggest supporter. So the supply lines run through Poland, and once they come in through Poland, there has to be a depot where all these things have to collect. You know, that they have to take stock as to what has come and what has not come, and a lot of inventory management has to take place,
Mm.
and then all that has to get further distributed into forward dumps, and from the forward areas they have to be taken over by the troops which are going to actually use it. So it's a logistic exercise in itself, getting equipment from all over the world, getting it together, earmarking it for specific units, sending it forward to those units taking over that equipment, getting trained, getting to know what the hell it is. I haven't seen this earlier before. Looks very nice. How does it work? Those kind of things will happen. So if it is next to the Polish border, it's no surprise, because that is where maximum concentration of arms and equipment would have taken place, because it would have entered through the Polish border or the route. That's how it would be.
Fantastic. Let's move forward, sir. Now you mentioned the Wagner. This was very. I
Yeah.
mean, let me just put my thoughts across. For me, it was funny the way he did all that. Gerasimov, Shoigu, this, that, all that. That entire tamasha that he did, the entire drama that he did was funny to me. And I personally think this is a part of a much larger deception sort of a game. He kept saying flanks, flanks, flanks in those videos, and Ukrainians went into the flanks. Some either other, some, as you said, not very, you know, great response from that. What happened here, sir? What's up with this guy, with Prigozhin, the Wagner boss, and why is he doing this? Is there actually a divide between the Russian army and him? What's happening here?
No, let's face facts. If there were a divide, he would have left long time back.
He would have been in Siberia, 6 feet down under the ground.
Yeah, no, no, he would have left. These are forces which are. He's here to make money.
Yeah.
He's not fighting for Russia. Let's get it right. Whom is he getting killed? He's getting criminals killed. He's getting paid soldiers killed, mercenaries killed. Those who volunteered, who got nothing to do in life and say, let me go and make a fast buck. Mar gaya to koi baat nahi, as it is, I'm of no use to to mankind. So that person who's fighting under the Wagner forces is a person who's ready to give up his life, as any soldier is actually. But the difference here is a soldier is ready to give up his life for his country, for his nation. Whereas a mercenary is ready to give up his life because he finds his life is worthless. And if I survive, I would have made a little bit of money. So the motivation for these guys is different. That is one. And who's the contractor? Prigozhin. He, he's the contractor. He's the big boss. He's the one who's making them fight. He's being paid to fight. That's one. Now, as far as there was something that he's supposed to have leaked information. He seems to have struck a deal with the Ukrainian intelligence that if you leave Bakhmut, now you see what I'm just understand what I'm saying. If you leave Bakhmut, I will give information about Russian deployments. If you leave Bakhmut, make me successful, make me victorious, then I will tell you where the Russians are. I'm not telling you earlier. So this is also a ploy. He's a businessman. He's doing a deal. He's doing a deal with the Ukrainians that, मेरे को जिता दो, then I'll help you.
If it is real, we don't even know that is or not.
No, even if it is real. I mean, even if I were a mercenary in force and I was,
Yeah, I would do that. Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
do that. Yeah, my money, is at stake. I say, yeah, let me win this battle.
घर चलते बहुत होगा.
You just imagine if I win and I win, not the
Yeah,
Russians win. The
yeah, yeah.
Wagner wins. Wagner is a force to reckon with. So you guys leave Bakhmut for me, and I'll tell you what it is. So that's what the mafia would do, right? So what do you think he is? Isn't he a part of the Russian mafia? He's as good as the Russian mafia. Only thing is he's fighting and getting people killed, and he's not smuggling drugs or gold.
We don't know what he's doing there, sir.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. So nothing very strange in that statement. Next, if he's a loudmouth and he's cursing the Russians, obviously he would want to do it and say that you give me weapons, man. I mean ammunition. I need ammunition. If I don't curse you on media, you're not going to give it to me. If I may just put it in a very interesting manner, the lines of communication are so in the battlefield. How does he make the President Putin to listen to him first? I go on media and I make a bloody एलान कि यार मुझे ammunition भेज दे नहीं तो मैं जा रहा हूँ. It's a direct communication to the president.
रेट इंक्रीज की बात कर रहा है सर. थोड़ा रेट इंक्रीज कर दो यार. इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ गया है. थोड़ा रेट इंक्रीज कर दो साहब.
हाँ. So have you understood? That's the fastest way of conveying a message. Get out of the media and let loose. The whole world listens and the president is pressurized and he also gets the message. Otherwise, he won't get it. If he followed the chain of command, it would take 20 days to reach that message with perhaps, the severity of it would be suspect. Okay. Sorry.
That's not wrong.
So the severity of it would be suspect, the requirement. So this is, you announce in the media, it goes directly to the world. Yeah, I need ammunition. This guy is a bloody son of a bitch. He's not giving me what I want. So that's what he's done, and I think that was a very smart move. So the guy is a very clever guy. He is fighting, and he's fighting for money, and his stakes are very high.
He's a billionaire, sir. ऐसे बहुत
है. And he's got politicians. He is wanting to be in place of President Putin next. So he wants to be the hero who won the Ukrainian war.
Political ambitions,
So
huh?
nothing very. I think it's, and the Western media is making a big hoo-ha about it, and I think they have nothing much to. They're not there in the front lines. They're too damn scared to get killed. Unlike, quite a few of them have already got killed. These defense correspondents. They're, let me tell you, they're very, very brave. These defense correspondents. They put their life at stake when they move in into the battle zone. And
Oh, I think we lost Sir. No worries. We'll I'll just try and see if he can join us back. But this is a very interesting site that Sir was telling us. Prigozhin has. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen that video. It's explosive. The guy is screaming, shouting. He's got whole lot of things, abuses and this and that, and he calls out. Uh, you know, I just he's calling out the Russian general staff and saying, "You guys are not giving me. Look at these guys; these are dead, and this and that." I mean, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Why is he doing this in the public domain? Now, sir tells us that it's probably a ploy to get some attention up there. But the interesting part is that what is happening is Zelensky being asked to resign by members of the European Union, guys. This is the big news which is coming out. I guess the Europeans are also getting sick of this entire thing and wanting to do stuff. As Sir said, Poland is the one that actually said that Zelensky must resign because he is Ukrainian president is losing the support of European neighbors, and this is a story that was broken again by Seymour Hersh. Remember, Seymour Hersh has got sources. Okay, he's broken a lot of stories. The countries that have actually told him this is Poland, Hungary, Lithuania, Estonia, Czechoslovakia, and Latvia. So these are the countries. Okay, we have Sir back.
oh
Sergi,
yeah,
welcome
I'm
back.
sorry. I'm sorry. Last night we had a massive storm this side, and since then there's a little issue.
Aaj chalega, sir. I was just telling everybody, sir, which countries in the EU have actually told Zelensky to resign. They are Poland, Hungary, Lithuania, Estonia, Czechoslovakia, and Latvia.
Yeah, those 5 6 countries.
And all of them are East European, huh, by the way.
Yes, they're all East European and bordering Russia.
Yeah.
You know, so there is
कुछ
dynamics
तो
are going to
गड़बड़ है.
soon change. Now let's. I think leaving Ferguson aside, the shape or the trajectory this war is going to take, if it is put to an end today on as is, where is lines, in my opinion, Ukraine is better off. Will the Russians want to do it at this particular point? No. So the Russians will push this war till their minimum strategic gains have been achieved. And the minimum strategic gains that they would like to achieve is a complete hold of all the four these provinces. The Donbass, entire Donbass region, and that is all the four provinces, or four oblasts, and Odessa,
Hmm.
and the border all along the Black Sea. So once they've achieved this should be their bare minimum, what they would want to achieve. Only then will they say, okay, fine, because they do not want any complications thereafter. They, what would they want? They've got all the Russian speaking and Russian pro-Russian territories, which they have claimed. They've got that. They've got full control over the Black Sea, and that is what they're looking at. That's the minimum. So even if the world rallies behind Ukraine and makes Zelensky resign or push him to uh, accept a ceasefire, I'm afraid the Russians at this particular stage would not accept. If I were in their place, I would not. So this is where it stands.
So, last question, we have an interesting development which is also happening in on the other side of the pond in America, where now a lot of lawmakers are saying, "यार बस करो बहुत हो गया." I mean, and second thing is that the money is gonna run out in June. There's no more money after that. Biden has to go back to Congress to get more money for Ukraine. And right now, Biden has just cancelled a quad meeting because there is a debt crisis in America itself. So, what this is the big thing, and we've recently seen the globalist cabal, the neocon globalist State Department. Their rhetoric has it's gone, sir.
Yeah, I mean, let's face facts. Any nation, they have underestimated Russia, and they kind of got enthused. I would just put it this way: when the Russians retreated,
Huh.
a retreat vis-a-vis uh, a defeat are two different things. This was a strategic retreat that they did, and they reorganized themselves. I mean, they found it was not working, so they went back. And these guys were like, "Oh, the Russians have been defeated; they've been pushed out of the country, and all that stuff." Well, that's not how it was, and they misread it, and they thought that the Russian army is not organized. If you heard the initial statements, and everybody, all of us, I included, felt that the Russians didn't know how to fight a war, but that's not the case.
Became
They've taken
different.
Yeah, they've taken about 6 to 8 months, regrouped, reorganized, and they've let loose their particular policy. They're doing it in a systematic manner. They must be having advisors like me, sitting there and trying to tell them what to do.
This is something very eerie, huh? So last time we discussed, and guys, you must know this.
Yeah, yeah.
Last time, sir discussed the Odessa, this thing, and that slight little piece of land that connects Romania and Moldova and all that stuff. And the next day, there was a missile strike on the bridge that connects Romania and Ukraine, cutting off any and all possibilities of any NATO troops trying to enter Ukraine from Romania. That's one of the biggest bridges that can actually take in that kind of traffic. And the next day, this thing happened. So I don't know, sir, what you're up to, but that was a little eerie to me.
No, I don't. I'm no advisor to nobody, but my common military knowledge and my experience is what I'm putting across, and that is what one has to be thinking, and one has to be fighting in that particular manner. And today, again, at the cost of repeating, the Ukrainians think that they can surprise. In my opinion, I think they will be surprised if they do not pay heed to all these, overtures for resignation, uh, the disenchantment in the European Union, the divide within NATO. All this is happening because there are people who understand as to what will happen if a ceasefire doesn't take place.
There's
There will
also
be.
another thing, the new American, what's it, chief of staff, the main, what's it called? Uh,
Hmm.
this General Milley's replacement would be coming in now. And
Yeah.
he's quite opposed to this whole thing. The rumor has it that he's saying, yeah, this thing needs to stop. Because the NATO commander has already said it. No, don't underestimate. Cavoli, that guy's name, NATO commander's name is Cavoli, and Mike Milley's designation, I keep forgetting, I'm sorry. But the next guy's views are pretty clear on this.
You see, the Americans have always screwed it up, whether it was Afghanistan, whether it was Iraq, and whether it was because who are the peoples with the newcons behind all this
Hmm.
waging wars.
Same guys.
the same guys all over again. They cook up a story, they build a narrative, they convince the government, they, they get the Americans killed. In this particular instance, post Afghanistan, they've decided not to get the Americans killed. And because if, the very important thing is, why is Ukraine not being given membership of NATO even at this particular stage? Because the moment it's given membership to NATO, the Americans have to jump in and fight with them. Natural. If they have to fight in Ukraine, if the American soldiers have to fight in Ukraine, they will die.
Huge
Quite a,
numbers.
there will be casualties. And trust me, American public is done with getting body bags back home. They've had enough post Afghanistan. So I think otherwise this would have been, in the had it been about 10 years or back, they would have jumped into the fray by now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So at the moment, they're not ready to accept the common man. The public is not ready to accept any body bags. They are not wanting to fight somebody else's battle. This is
Short 10
okay.
seconds, sir.
Yeah.
Short 10 seconds. Has the Americans completely misread the Russian military power?
No,
Or
say
is
again.
this, have the American intelligence completely misread the Russian military power? Just,
No, no, no. They won't have misread. I will. The Americans, the intelligence agencies, this thing is very superior and very accurate. Now, as I said, their reading of a situation would be very accurate. The intelligence part of it. But then I said this is when it is provided to a third country, it becomes second-hand intelligence.
no, for their own selves, sir. I mean, the president, I'm sure Biden would have asked her how strong are the Russians.
No, let me tell you, the intelligence community and the military, if you have seen their, congressional hearings, they don't mince their words, they don't lie, they speak the truth. They, they're very, very truthful about and honest about giving their opinions. They're very professional. Now, their reading of the situation would be absolutely accurate, but then it gets twisted because of political motivations and you know pressures from the rest of the people.
My God. It's,
The
this is going to be,
only misreading I would say has been the cause of the strategic retreats or forced retreat, which and the losses which the Russians suffered initially. So that has been misread. The Russians came with a different aim, and they got sorted out. So it was a failure on the part of the Russian intelligence, and because they did not visualize the reaction which would take place. So when they realized that it wasn't working, this was not the way it's going to be. They went back after having suffered a lot of losses. But this kind of emboldened the West, and that is a misread. Yes. Yeah.
that clears up quite a bit. Let's get into some questions, sir. What does the audience have to say? Uh, Here we go. And guys, before I begin, like, subscribe, most importantly, spread the message. Today, by the way, sir, we've crossed 21,000 followers. So
Wow.
that's a
Congratulations.
decent milestone. Thank you so much. Thanks so much to all the audience that have been, collecting together as a team. 21,000 is a decent number.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Very nice.
I honestly didn't think I will reach here. This is something, very far away when you start up a YouTube channel and are completely unknown in the game. So
No,
thanks so much.
you're doing well because you're not only talking Ukraine, you're talking a whole lot of issues. I purposely stay out of other issues, Pakistan, China, because of far many people speaking on that.
No, you and I had discussed we'll pick a topic and stick with it. So let's go on till the time the Ukraine war finishes, and then we'll pick another one after that.
Yeah, sure.
And by the looks of it, there's gonna be a freeze, as you mentioned. So guys,
Yeah.
like, subscribe, very critically. If you can, please do contribute to the Left Talks efforts. The QR code is above. You can become a member or send us a super sticker or super chat, which is what Naveen has done. Thanks so much. General sir, brokering a peace agreement is a huge diplomatic opportunity. China would want to double up after its KSA Iran coup. Can the US use its Ukraine leverage to get this diplomatic victory?
Okay. Now, you know, China is wanting to be a big player in the world and aiming to be the number one superpower and the only global power, sole superpower. They've been able to achieve what they have between the Saudis and the Iranians. Uh, well, as far as India is concerned, we are very clear. While we are a respected country, I do not think India would want to entangle itself because it has good relations with all the stakeholders in this particular war. You know, we have relations with most of the NATO countries one to one. We've had earlier, prior to the war, we had interests with Ukraine. We are a great partner of the Russians. We are a great partner of the Americans. Uh, so India, while the world looks up to India as far as a nation is concerned, brokering peace, US, I'm sure behind the media and on different parlets would be asking India to intervene. But I knowing and understanding our diplomats and our polity, uh, we would not want to get in and dirty our hands in this kind of a conflict. We would rather make the best of what is happening and be on the just side. Now, if you may just turn around and say the just thing to do is would be to stop the war and use its influence. Uh, well, our prime minister has already made it very clear to President Putin that this is not the era of war, and wars would lead nowhere. Uh, so we are not actually going to fall prey to the United States, and we are also very clear that in certain platforms we don't want to compete with China. We like to let China do what it wants to do. We are a huge country. We are a developing country. China is nearly developed, and China's ambitions and our ambitions, while we are
Uh-huh.
ambitious, uh, they run kind of parallel. But today, maybe we don't want to get into this kind of a situation.
Indeed.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if I may humbly add as well that uh, how do you trust, especially the West, who's actually messed up this peace agreement before as well? So
Yeah.
if you do end up putting a security guarantee and the West does what it did before as well, you're in trouble. So
No,
it's
we will not because we do understand. You see, if you just look at this war dispassionately, it should not have happened,
yeah,
and it has happened because of the Americans,
absolutely.
and it's been pushed. Ukraine has been pushed to fight by the United Kingdom and the US. So we understand India as a nation understands this and would not like to get involved in something like this.
Indeed. Ishan, thanks so much for your contribution. Jai Hind, sir, with the last few days, events now solidify buyers' confidence in the Russian S-400 systems versus the US Patriot systems. That's a good question, buddy.
Very good question. Now, if I may just put it, the US Patriot system has been tried out.
Yeah,
It's a tried out system that it is not foolproof, right? Now, the only good thing is that our adversaries do not have hypersonic missiles. China is in the development stage. The Americans are in the, they are not our enemies, but still they are on the blackboard stage. And our own missiles, our own whatever R&D or development which is taking place. I'm sorry, I do not really know. But what I'm saying is the Russian S-400 uh, would be at par with the US Patriot system. And S-400s, have they been deployed? Have they been effective against such kind of a thing? Again, I mean, it's a tough choice, but then we've already made the choice as far as the Russian S-400 is concerned, and
That's true, sir.
it must have been done very deliberately after considering the Patriot system as well.
Also, sir, a lot of people consider, the S-400 to be not good because it's not able to, intercept these little drones that fly around. Uh, that's a bit out of the league, right?
You see, these drones, let's get it right, detecting drones, earlier the drones are not there.
Yeah.
So, what at least I know of, that we are developing our anti-drone capability, right? Shooting down these drones, and there are a large number of players in the market who are working on this. There are two, three ways. How do you put down a drone? You don't have to physically, destroy it. A drone has to be in communication. It is being piloted. There is a guy on ground who's piloting it. So that communication, if you interfere that direction, communication, the thing drops. Second is laser weapons. So their speed is not so much. They can be dropped, they can be aimed at, and they can be dropped. So a physical drop and a communication drop, and having drones who can counter drones in the air. So these kind of technologies are getting developed, and so utilizing an S-400 for drones is not a very what you call cost-effective way, right? And of course, I do agree this drone warfare is uh, getting better by the day, and I'm sure anti-drone warfare capability would soon be developed to cater for it. But cost effectiveness is also what you got to see.
So, Sean, once again, thank you so much. So, what will it take to get the world to understand the grift of Zelensky and condemn the MIC for instigating this conflict?
Really did not get your question.
Understand the evilness of Zelensky and condemn the military industrial complex for instigating this sort of a conflict.
No, the world understands this. The military industrial complex is, the whole world understands this. I mean, anybody who knows, who reads, and anybody who followed Iraq, who followed Afghanistan, Syria, all this, we all understand. We all understand what's going on in Africa, why wars,
Sudan.
internal rights being created. So, uh, and the common man, unfortunately, will never understand this. They will look at the TV and keep watching the TV and believe what the media is saying. But any well-read person knows what is happening, and majority of the people will not understand. Let me just put it this way. And I know I understand what will it get to take the world to understand. Difficult to make everybody understand because most of us are so gullible watching the television that it's slightly difficult. But those who matter do understand.
So,
Yeah.
Rishi Karan says any long-layered, low-intensity air defense system can be overwhelmed by saturation attacks. Prime example of modern SEAD operations. Thank you, General Sir, for elaborating the details.
Now, CAD operations is suppression of enemy air defense. So when you're that just for the arrest of people. Now, uh, non-layered low density. Well, all air defense systems are layered. So, you know, there is layering
Yeah.
as you go up in the air. There is layering, and any country which is worthwhile would have or armed forces worthwhile its sort would have layered it, would have structures in place wherein systems in place where targets flying at particular heights, the responsibility, etc., would be worked out. Yeah. Now, overwhelming by saturation attacks is a technique that we have just witnessed. All these air defense systems go haywire when you saturate with so many of them. And I would put it, if you launched 100, 60 may get intercepted, but 40 will still go through. So I do agree with you. The saturation attacks that we have witnessed, I mean, the Patriot missile system has been destroyed or damaged, is a testimony of that. And when you're talking of SEAD, we've yet not got, you know, we've got fighter aircraft or bomber aircraft firing from, way far distances. So we've not had direct attacks taking place onto these enemy air defenses, and they will come in later. Trust me, this SEAD operation is being very well orchestrated. So the direct attacks, fighter aircraft flying in and things like that, they will come in once the Russians are very, very clear that their entire air defense system has been suppressed. They don't want to lose any aircraft.
Very
Next
interesting two
target,
part. Sorry.
next target, all airfields.
Okay, guys, let's note this down and let's start. I'm gonna start picking on the news and seeing. Okay, airfields make sense.
Yeah, next target, all airfields.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Two parts from Naveen sir. Mersheimer argues that China has been the real winner in this war by keeping US occupied. US objective of defeating Putin is a pipe dream, and US looks weak if it pulls out. In that
absolutely,
context, the only dignified solution is if Ukraine itself pushes for peace. Does that line of thinking make sense? And does Zelensky removal form a part of this strategy?
absolutely. That's what John Mershamer has been talking about, and he made it very, very clear that the war is, if Ukraine should be the one which pushes for peace. If it doesn't, if it gets defeated, then it's a defeat for the United States. And the true winner is, of course, China, because it said, "I'm here for peace. You want to have a peace, strike a peace deal." No, no, no. We will not strike a peace deal until unless the Russians are driven out. And if that war in is not achieved, in this entire thing, I think the Americans, the NATO forces, and the Americans are losers either way. Until unless it's a total rout. Imagine the might of 54 countries, of which 31 are NATO countries, against one country, and they are not able to throw that country out of another country. Uh, well, then that coalition is of no use. Well, that the Americans have not been able to prove themselves. And the Chinese would turn around and say, "Look, we offered peace. You should have agreed, but you were stubborn." So China is in a win-win situation here.
As sir had said about a month ago, NATO should now do NATO NATO.
मैं तो पहले ही बोला था नाटू नाटू.
सर आपका दोस्त आ
and
गया
and
वापस.
and again, the cost of repeating that particular song was actually shot in Ukraine.
Yep, 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 yep.
That's the beauty of it.
वहीं पर नाटू बजेगा सर. आपका दोस्त आ
Yeah.
गया सर. Wow, this is a shocker, General. You're better informed than us. So
On
that's what
what?
about Zelensky, sir. So that's what Zelensky went to Europe from, and he says, "Thanks for Mother Russia, sir. I look forward for this from now on."
You're welcome, my friend. I guess you're the military advisor here somewhere, if not in India. But yeah, that's what he's been. He's got after the French media mocking him. and they said his tour has been equivalent to that of a traveling circus. So the French media mocked Zelensky, and the
The Italians are
Ukrainian.
damn pissed at him going and meeting the Pope in a pretty jumpsuit.
Yeah, I mean, uh, well, he's going all over. He's all actually what he's saying is either you give me weapons or I'm going.
Yeah,
You know, you want me to fight. You want me to fight. I don't want to fight. You want me to fight. If you want me to fight, you got to give me weapons, man. That's the attitude. And if you don't give me weapons, I'm going.
I think that's what is happening at the back end, sir.
So what is he going to say? Face saving? I needed weapons. I needed weapons. Nobody is giving me weapons. You think I'm a fool fighting for my country? You're not helping me. I'm going. And that's going to happen precisely. Just watch.
Ishan has a follow up, and thanks so much for your contribution. He says, "Would the Israeli Iron Dome be a good choice for intercepting smaller, low tech missiles, warheads, and drones in this kind of a scenario?"
Yes. Now, why I say yes? Because Israelis are fighting a battle day in, day out. Every day, it's a war zone. And they've been in this war zone for so many years. And definitely, the Iron Dome would be a worthwhile choice. Absolutely agree with you.
So, next, he says, as the trajectory plots towards a further permanent loss of territory by Ukraine, can NATO deter further advances by Russia, whether in Ukraine or elsewhere? How long before Russia tests NATO?
No, where else are we looking at? You know, where else are we looking at the NATO deterring Russia? Are we looking at Finland not happening? You're looking at rest of the other three countries, Estonia, Latvia, and all these not happening. Lithuania not happening. The only border that I see is Ukraine, and that is where it's been tested. And Russia today is actually testing NATO. Why testing NATO? It is challenging NATO. It has challenged NATO, and I would say, even if it's as the statistics go, prior to the war, they had 16,000 or 12,000 square miles. Just a sec. Let me get the fact right before I make a statement. Yeah, they had 16,000 square miles of territory which they had occupied prior to the war. Today they have 40,000 square miles. So whatever said and done,
Three
uh,
times almost.
yeah, they were three times the territory they've already occupied. And when they had initially come in, and when they left, uh, that particular time, it was they had 27% of Ukraine which they had occupied. Today it is at 17%. 10% has been lost because they withdrew. They did that tactical retreat or strategic retreat that they did. So whatever said and done, they've destroyed Ukraine.
Yes.
Cities and cities have been destroyed. People have been displaced. Families have gone. So, what the Ukrainians were doing to the Russians, staying in Donbass, shelling them and wanting them to vacate areas, they've done the opposite. So NATO as such has already been tested. The fact of the matter remains that NATO has not been able to come into Ukraine. They have only been able to supply. They have only been a bystander and a cheering, party from the sides. Uh, you know what happens in a game? You have the cheering party, you have the cheerleaders, and then you have these people who keep, the ball boys who come and give you water and things like that. So that is what NATO is doing. They have not stepped into the court. They're outside the court. They're giving them, glucose water, energy drinks, giving them a towel, and cheering
Just
up.
नीचे मार ऊपर मार.
That's it. Shouting from the sides. So that's what they've done. So NATO's tested. NATO's tested, and let's get it right. NATO was not supposed to. NATO had already been weakened, and had it not been for the Americans who wanted to uh, have a foothold on Europe once again, this NATO would not have been there by now. It would have anyway. Has the NATO been strengthened? Yes, it has been strengthened. Will it be effective? No.
No.
Yeah.
Anikesh says, doesn't the US seem confused? It is running a war in Ukraine while being caught in the mud in, drumming a war in Taiwan while being caught in the mud in Ukraine, at the same time alienating the Quad while facing a massive upheaval at the domestic front. What's up?
Ever seen President Biden? What he says and what he speaks, where he stumbles and where he writes. I don't want to go beyond that. So when the fact of the matter remains that what the fuck. Hmm. The fact of the matter remains that they were always a confused nation.
Hmm.
I mean, I shouldn't be saying so, but that's what they have made themselves to be, at least in the eyes of the world.
Yeah, that's absolutely, absolutely.
You know, Taiwan issue, major issue. Now, tomorrow, let's hypothetical. China steps into Taiwan. What will the Americans do? What will the Quad do? Is it in a position to do something worthwhile, or will it go the NATO way? Anybody's wild guess. So this is something. This is a very serious matter, and a very, in my opinion, a very important strategic decision any country must take. Today, China gets into Taiwan, sooner or later, diplomatically it will take it, or politically it will take it, or militarily it will take it. But I want to know what is the planned reaction. It has to be very well thought of. And I'm sure the world and the Quad and the militaries are thinking about it in view of the Ukrainian war. All mature nations, all mature countries, everybody is studying this war very intently. And when you're studying, China would also be studying. China studied the Gulf War very intently, changed its doctrine, uh, changed its thought process. Today, it would be studying this particular war and trying to correlate that in Taiwan. If we do this, what's an American reaction? What's the reaction from other countries? Will they come together? How many ships? All that. But let me just tell you, America is a maritime and an air power.
There's no questions.
The number of bases it has around in that area. Well, Russia was a secondary threat. The prime threat has always been China. So they're dealing with a secondary threat right now. So the reaction to what against the Chinese would be totally different, and the dealing would be totally different to what it is today. What is happening in Europe doesn't belong to them. They are just seeking importance in Europe. They are just seeking trade from Europe. European lives don't matter to the Americans, right? But once they get into a direct conflict with another nation, I am 100% and 200% sure that their reaction to dealing with China would be way superior, very well considered, very well thought of, and substantial. So you got to
America's
think
not a
that.
fool. I mean, at the end of it,
Yeah, yeah.
their politicians are fool. Military not.
No, no, military is not. Military is very superior. Everything is in order, and when it is, you know, this war is being dealt in a different manner. That will be dealt in a proper professional manner. Here they are not directly engaged. There they will be directly engaged. So things are different. Things are totally different.
So,
Yeah.
last couple of questions, sir. How do our missiles like ballistic and cruise missiles compared with Russia, US, and West and China? This, as we have almost the same every types of missiles now except the hypersonic. But
Yes, I think we are as good, maybe better. I'm not a missile man. I've never served in these organizations. But if you just when you uh, think about this question, think about the capabilities of ISRO. That's it.
by the way, guys, there's a news that ISRO's latest engine is going to be pa- much more powerful than Elon Musk's SpaceX. I don't know
Yeah.
what these guys are up to, but
So that's what I'm saying. When you talk in advancements in our missile capabilities, just think ISRO. Our technology is way superior. It's mostly indigenous. If you recollect, when we had these sanctions as far as the cryogenic engine, etc., was concerned, we produced our own. So our indigenous capability is very good. Our previous, God bless his soul, president was the man behind all this. So I would rate our capability as good, if not better.
so this question I keep wondering about, and Ashok, I must tell you, this is something I keep thinking about quite a bit. Now, if I may take 30 seconds, this is the last one I'm going to ask you. The I'll read this out and I'll just tell you what I my thought process is. If Zelensky is left high and dry, then there is not a risk of him turning on the West out of frustration, maybe start some terrorism in the West. Now, the plan A of the war of the West is what's happening right now. I mean, of course, that's something that they didn't plan, that they will lose face or whatever it is. We know the this thing. The plan B would be if the Russians actually win, infiltrate and create some trouble. Fair enough. But what happens when the West has actually gone into a country and created a cult, sir? Like Afghanistan. You've done created a cult of the Taliban. The Taliban came behind you and they wanted to hit you after that. You've done the same thing here at the end of it. This whole Ukraine nationalism, the right wing nationalism, and these guys are violent. They're terribly violent. Will this become an epicenter for terrorism in Europe?
You know, uh, if I go back when the war started and the quantum of arms which were being pushed into Ukraine, this question had been asked then, what a year and a half back. What will happen to this equipment which has been given to Ukrainians after the war? This entire thing, I just want to pose a question. We talk of large number of equipment. How do you not know that at least 20-30% of this equipment is going back into Europe?
It's already gone, sir.
Yeah. So, and what is happening there? And we are talking neo Nazis and all that, and right wingers and things like that. And uh, the situation is quite scary in countries in Europe. The white supremacy brigade, all that. What is happening in Europe is quite scary. They
Apart from
are
that, Islamism. There's a huge amount of Islamism also.
Yes, there are these Islamists. There are white supremacists, people who do not appreciate the Asians coming in. So this kind of things are already there. They're existing, and now you've got so much of weapons, and things may get out of hand in many countries. So I wouldn't say Zelensky in particular himself, but the outcome of this is the what do you call, what should I say? What is the right word for it? That Europe would have been armed with very dangerous weapon systems, and they would be in the hands of all these guys, whether they are Islamists or whether they are white supremacists. And the internal situations in these countries is going to get rather bad. You know that there is already looting, etc., taking place in UK. Stores are being ransacked. You know that stores are getting closed because of economic situations. So people are jobless. In India, you don't see ransacking of stores because of hunger. But that's what is happening even in the United States today. So things are going to be very, very bad, and it's not a good thing. This supplies of so much of arms and ammunition. Uh, there has to be, after the war ends, either there is a UN peacekeeping mission, and even if it is there, then it has to be properly monitored. Weapons have to be gathered. You know how a peace mission takes place. You have a ceasefire, then you have a kind of a buffer zone, then you have demobilization of troops, then you have collection of weapons, then you have destruction of weapons, and all that which takes place, then a rehabilitation of all the guys who've been demobilized. So that's quite an intricate process. So will a UN peacekeeping mission come about, and who will participate in that, and all these things? So let us see as to where it leads us to.
Actually, one comment comes that New York Times has reported Ukrainian soldiers risk their lives to keep weapons from the black market. They can't track every shell, but a time of heightened security.
Yeah, that's how it is.
It's
That's
true.
how it is.
So let me just say this. You know, one thing that we've seen in this war, and is that a lot of stuff is put out into the public domain, which is probably done to confuse everybody. And one does need a little help to kind of decipher the mess sometimes, because it's a little technical when it comes to weapons, and a lot of these things are you know a lot of these things are requiring a little technical edge, which us common civilians won't have, and you obviously have it. So thank you so much for actually putting a little headlight into that, so that we can also see what's happening. But one thing that you've brought out today is very interesting, this whole Zelensky resignation thing. This has been people have been talking about this for a while. People have been figuring out, think tanks, there's that, there've been articles written one out here and there. But now for these 4 5 countries to put this thing out, and I know one thing for a fact, a lot of the media is going to try and rope this in, create a spin, this, that, all that will start happening from tomorrow. But it's an interesting situation that you brought out, and what will be the future to this entire thing, and the propensity, actually, the agreement from the Russian and the Ukrainian side to listen to a peace proposal from Africa, from various other sources. It's an interesting move. Within 1 week, pretty much everything has changed, from the aggression of a drone strike on the Kremlin. Today we sit in a place where things are a little different, and probably, I won't say facing peace, but starting to make that little turn. I hope so. But Zelensky is a mad person. If he launches his counteroffensive, one can't say what the Russians will do. So thanks so much. You've been on target till now, and your predictions have, you know, pin on target, and I congratulate you for that. Thank you so much for joining in once again, sir, and looking forward for another insightful episode next week. Till then, guys, thank you so much. Please do like before you leave. Jai Hind to all of you, and sir.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening in. It's always wonderful to partake in a discussion like this. Thank you very much. Take care. And as my regiment says, Tagda Raho. So,
Ji Shab.